A major thing is changing here, you know, and just doing the old tribal partisan bullshit is not going to, like, that's not going to be enough to meet this moment. Think about how much damage that did to lose Trump so much energy and favor. Like, you'd have to actually be for an America First agenda or you're going to lose.
I mean, let's just be real. Trump's approval ratings are in the tank. Even his fiercest defenders, his fiercest supporters, have to admit that fact. And in this video, Dave Smith breaks down why that's the case and why the recent triumphs of the Democratic Party in the New York mayoral race and in Virginia's governorship show that to be true. How has Trump squandered all this goodwill that he had in this big MAGA and Maha coalition from just 1 year ago? Let's see. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Look, the fundamental problem here is that you got a government in Washington, D.C. that spends about $7 trillion a year. It's $7 trillion a year that's yanked out of the real economy and given to cronies. And then the entire rest of the economy is this kind of Wall Street casino system that's all run off low interest rates and fiat currency. What has Donald Trump done to solve any of those issues, Rob? Has Donald Trump even pretended to grapple with one of them? Oh, what's he done? Oh, he's increased it. He's increased government spending and asking for more. And so look, it's just like the fundamentals on the ground are like, we have to reject empire and reject big government in order to fix any of these. And Donald Trump isn't even prepared to even rhetorically do that. So yeah, you could sit there and keep talking about how when you decided to change the tariffs because Canada said something about a Palestinian state, that was really a brilliant economic move or something, but nobody's seeing it. Nobody's seeing it. The problem is still the same problem. It's unaffordability. This is how Democrats are, you know, labeling it. But what is that, Rob, other than just saying the same thing we've been saying, except just for 20 years instead of for 6 months, which is that you're destroying the currency. That's the way someone who understands economics would put unaffordability. You're debasing your currency.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Dave's right about that. And not only is Trump unprepared to meet this moment and exacerbate the spending crisis, the debt crisis, we're $38 trillion in debt after all, he not only refuses to address that, he promotes bills that add trillions of dollars to the debt, including the big abominable bill. That recently was passed. He whipped people that were against it, you know, dragged Thomas Massie for opposing it, pointing this out. And Massie thinks it's going to add even more than $5 trillion to the debt because of how this will affect the bond market. He could be right about that. He's not prepared to meet this moment. And guess what the central bank, the Federal Reserve, does to finance this? It prints more money. It prints more money that's not backed by specie or bullion or a sound commodity at all. It's backed by full faith and credit of the United States government, which doesn't have a great reputation right now, let's just say, when it comes to the depreciation of the dollar. Sure, the dollar isn't depreciating as some other inflationary currencies, but it still is depreciating. It's only worth something like 3% of what it was when it was originally created in 1913. That's where we're at. No one's changed course on that. All the money printing and expenditures for war and corporate welfare and the welfare state and the surveillance state and the police state, it hasn't done America any good. And anyone that stands up against it, like Thomas Massie and Marjorie Taylor Greene, are just shut down and they have to be primaried, according to Trump. So yeah, Dave's right.
Even like, say, like the Epstein stuff. Now, I'm not saying that obviously you know, I don't think I think most voters vote over inflation much more than they vote over Epstein. You know, like the price of your health care and your groceries and immigration and, you know, schooling and stuff like this are much more important to most people than Epstein. But think about something like Epstein. Think about how much damage that did to lose Trump so much energy and favor with so much of the, you know what I mean? Like the people.
It sends a heavy signal that Donald Trump is not cleaning up corruption. And I think people are aware of the fact that corruption is why they don't have the economic opportunity that they're looking for. And so once again, that cedes more area to the socialists, who I don't think most voters are so much bought into the philosophy of socialism, or that they prefer socialism. They just go, this is a rigged game, and this guy's promising to steal stuff from me.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
Robin Hood almost.
Right. Right. Well, at least he's addressing a concern that might be one of their concerns.
Yeah, that's the case. And for the record, I agree with both Dave and Robbie. Robbie put it perfectly here, that most voters don't vote just over the Epstein issue. They do vote for expenditures and, the unaffordability of living. That is surely true. The inflation, they see it at the gas station and at the grocery stores. I was at the grocery store yesterday. Beef has increased something like 3 times of what it was in 2019. That's just true. Both parties are complicit, but they just continue enacting the same policies that led to those cost increases. And that's more debt and more inflation, which is created by the Fed to finance that debt. That's just true. But at the same time, agreed, Epstein was emblematic of this issue that, Trump was going to tackle corruption and promote transparency. Well, what does it tell the American people when instead of, uprooting corruption, you're going to cover up a child sex trafficking ring that was likely part of a foreign blackmail operation? Well, what does that say to them? It says that you're just not real. You're a total phony. And that trickles into all other issues that you're pretending to be real about. That does sway voters.
And, as Tucker Carlson said on our last episode, and I think he's absolutely right about this, the thing here, and I guess what is really the tragedy to some degree in all of this, is that a true America First message could be a really big tent. This is a message that can win you national office. This is a message that could actually win you huge swaths of the left as well as the right in America. Just like the starting point being that it's like, hey, the role of the U.S. government ought to be what's best for the American people, period. And not what's best for the world, not what's best for other countries, not, none of the, now that, if you had a real message that was just like, hey, we are not wasting resources on foreign wars of choice that we do not have to fight. And we are not going to have a wide open border, and we are not going to continue debasing our currency. And we are not, a thing like that could have huge mass support.
He's right, and it has had mass support when the voters were fleeced into thinking that's what Trump was. He won on that kind of platform. He won in 2024 with that platform. And I see this, I'm just a microcosm of where Americans are politically, but in my comments section, there's nothing that real leftist dissidents agree with me more than on the issue with Israel and the Israel first mentality in government. That is a big coalition that transcends, typical orthodox left-right Democrat-Republican paradigm politics in a way that I've never seen in my lifetime. It's a real crossover. You're seeing a real Venn diagram. A lot of my viewers couldn't disagree with me more on stuff like, education or federal involvement in, healthcare or economics in general, or even wars like Ukraine. I'll lose some leftists on that. Not real dissident leftists that are really good on war in my mind, but some of them will be lost on that. But this Israel issue and Israel's domination over the U.S. political system is a real America First manifestation that would attract a large crowd in support.
But the reason, and look, among so many of the people who, amongst the Trump supporting Zionists, so many of them almost would get on board with that, except we got to support Israel. We saw almost so many of them got on board with it up to Ukraine, Rob. They were still even riding with Ukraine, but Israel, it's a whole different story. We can't not support them for the exact same reasons that I just argued we not support Ukraine, because we can't afford to.
Yeah, and Republicans refuse to apply the lessons that I think they properly know about Ukraine and the folly of supporting that proxy war versus a nuclear power to Israel. Probably even a more destructive entangling alliance in terms of how long it's been run that way. Since 1947, essentially, the U.S. didn't get that far involved until like the 1950s and 60s, but still, that is the case. They refuse to apply those same lessons to Israel. Why are you against the war in Ukraine? A lot of Republicans will say, well, it doesn't make sense to fund this foreign nation. It prioritizes another one above our own. It gets us enemies in a nuclear power. It gets us enemies all across the world we don't need. But then when it comes to Israel, they won't make that same judgment there. Why? Well, it's the power of the Israel lobby.
And I mean, look, you got if you just think about the promises, right? Of so many of the promises. Because I don't know why I always see it's kind of like the Alex Jones was right phenomenon. You know, you see all the times that people say Alex Jones was right. And it's like, well, what about all the times he was wrong? And they're like, we're not going to get into all that. You know, I always see the promises kept. That's a big thing Trump supporters like to put. Promises kept. And you're like, okay, what about all the ones that were broken? You know? I mean, I'm sorry. I remember he said he was going to end the Ukraine war on day one. Now, look, we all knew that was a little bit of a goofy promise, but like, okay, whether it's his fault or not, didn't deliver on that. You know, Epstein files didn't deliver on that. What was all this Kash Patel stuff? You remember all the stuff Kash Patel promised, Rob? I don't remember any of them being, we're going to bring down Chauncey Billups. And I'm okay. And I'm like, oh, that's great. There was a betting ring in the NBA. Okay, I'm really glad we got to the bottom of that one.
Yeah, that's right. I'm still waiting for Kash Patel to shut down the FBI Hoover building and in its place build a museum to the deep state. I think we'll be waiting a long time for that one, boys. I don't know that one's coming based upon how things are going.
And you can only just not deliver on so much before people will recognize that. And I also do think that, you know, I think that Trump's kind of cult of personality and Trump's charisma and just the, you know, included in that charisma is how goddamn entertaining Donald Trump is, how funny Donald Trump is, how much funnier he made the whole political circus and all this theater. I think that is fading to some degree. And I think that, you know, at a certain point, it's like people were so furious with the establishment, and then they loved that the thing that they could throw Donald Trump at them, the biggest middle finger to the establishment, and you could watch as he made them so angry. And I think that was so satisfying for so many people.
Totally agree with this. I know a lot of non-political people that just saw, you know, Trump as a manifestation of a meme. He was, you know, clowning the establishment in their minds. You know, that was just illusory. Obviously, he is part of the establishment now. But a lot of people voted for him that weren't politically engaged for that reason. He was seen as a total repudiation in some ways of politics as they're traditionally done in America. But at the same time, that only holds for so long. And when, you know, some Republicans can be placated with just that, with just owning the libs and not delivering on policy, other people that are attracted to support him will disregard him once he doesn't deliver. That's just the case, and I think you're seeing it play out right now.
You know, and I'm still an immature, angry teenager at heart. I still have these, you know, I said on the last podcast, and I meant it when I said it, that I go like, you know, that Ben Shapiro was calling Ron Paul a vicious anti-Semite. And I was like, good, now you get Nick Fuentes. You know, like it just makes you like root for vengeance against that person. And that's all good and fun. But I think as time goes on and as it gets a little bit less new and fresh and more kind of played out, people, you know, what's still there is that people were furious at the establishment to begin with for reasons. Not just because they felt that way. There were reasons, and none of those reasons have none of that's actually been solved.
Yeah, that's right. There's things more important than our carnal desires for vengeance, and I share them with Dave. But at some point, if it doesn't kind of come into policies and corrective things that really tackle the centralized American state, I want nothing to do with it. It's just empty promises. The rhetoric can be as good as you want, and some of it from Trump had been good in the past, but just never delivering on some of the most important promises. Shutting down the war in Ukraine, not starting new wars, releasing the Epstein files, you know, shutting down the deep state hasn't exactly happened yet. We're not seeing any of this really come to fruition. And, many of Trump's most sincere fans have stopped trying to defend him. What's to defend at this point? You can't defend some of this nonsense.
And this is something I would say almost like almost like as a message to other people who do what we do, like to the other political commentators. And I bring this up, I swear, I'm really not bringing this up just to be like petty or to brag about me or something like that. But I saw, and I just saw this, was it yesterday or earlier today? But so I had gone on, I went on Steven Crowder's show about a week ago. And I don't know if you saw any of that, but I went on and I argued with Steven Crowder. And look, I mean, I just personally, I thought it was just like, I thought it was kind of dumb. I as soon as it was over, I was like, well, that was a waste of time. Like, it was just kind of stupid. I thought it was very bad faith and kind of just like low IQ on his part. Like it felt like it was like an MSNBC kind of gotcha style. Like he basically just kept harping the whole time on how I called for Trump's impeachment and I had said Donald Trump's a war criminal. So that was like the whole thing. So, well, you say Donald Trump's a war criminal. I don't say Donald Trump's a war criminal. Oh, it sounds like you like Obama more than you like Donald Trump. Like that was just the angle to go at me with. And I don't know. I just, it felt like the Josh Hammer debate a lot where I go, I guess that's the best argument you have. I guess the best job Josh Hammer could start with is be like, hey, everyone here, you like Trump, right? And then they go, yeah. You go, this guy doesn't like Trump. I do like Trump. You don't like Trump.
Yeah, it's so low IQ, but that's low-hanging fruit for them. They think it's red meat that's going to win a debate against Dave Smith. You got to be kidding with me on that. I covered this debate. We'll call it a debate, but I agree with Dave. I covered 2 segments of that on this channel from a few days ago, so if you want to see my takes on their debates, take a look at that. But Dave's right, that was largely the debate, and that's showing where people are. Like, this isn't going deep into the issues. It doesn't show why Trump is superior if your version of events is that Trump doesn't deserve to be impeached as a war criminal, as, in my opinion, all presidents in my lifetime deserve to be impeached as a war criminal.
And I actually did call Crowder out at one point for it, where I was like, all you guys, all you neocons always like are trying to, Ben Shapiro names me for the first time ever only after I call for Trump's impeachment, because you're all trying to be like, oh, look, this guy is against Trump because now you think you can like win the social psychology of the argument or whatever. And I did point out that all of you neocons were the original never Trumpers. At one point, I asked Crowder, I was like, who'd you support in the primary in 2016? And he was like, Carly Fioroni or whatever. It's like, okay. So like, whatever.
Did he really? But that is true. I mean, these guys were never Trumpers. The vast majority of them, the Levins, the frickin' Ted Cruzes, the Ben Shapiros, and the Crowders of the world didn't support Trump. They were never Trumpers. But what the neocons have found out is that they can carefully manage Trump's giant ego and kind of fluff it and say, wow, he's a president that means business. He's tough against, all of America's enemies, and still direct him toward their viewpoints carefully by doing that. And Trump's culpable too. I'm not saying that, Trump has no responsibility in this. Trump is a supervillain. But at the same time, they've been able to manage him in the direction of their interests more than the people they fought against that were supporting Trump originally because he had good rhetoric on foreign policy at times.
But I was just making the point, and I argued with him on all the topics. And I was like, yeah, dude, I'm not here to just kiss Trump's ass, And I guess when I was done with it, I was just like, oh, that was kind of stupid. And then a friend of mine was like, dude, have you seen the comment section? And I hadn't. And I just went onto YouTube, and it's on Steven Crowder's channel. He's got 5 or 6 million subscribers on his YouTube channel. It's like he's one of the biggest online conservative commentators of the last 10 years for sure. And I mean, dude, he's just getting eviscerated in his own comments. Like even Steven Crowder's audience is like, dude, we're not just blindly supporting Trump anymore. Like actually, this guy had an argument and all you had was, but you're not Team Trump.
Interesting. I'm going to have to go to that comment section and check that out. I didn't see that. I wouldn't doubt that, though, based on what I've seen in comment sections on people like Rogan, when he had Rogan and Douglas Murray on, etc. Like, it's very clear that Dave's side of the argument is persuading more people than the Israel First side of the argument. And I won't even accuse Crowder that I'm not a big Crowder fan. I don't think he believes in, funding foreign regimes, but at the same time, he's pushing back against Dave's views about, Israel. And Crowder was arguing at times that, hey, the U.S. shut down Iran in this strike on Iran, not because of Israel, because of U.S. interests and them being a threat to the U.S. I'm like, how can you that's so utopian and absurd. What threat does Iran pose to the United States? It's the United States that killed Iranians in the coup in 53, shooting down Flight 655, almost 300 people murdered by the United States in the context of the Iraq-Iran war. A lot of people don't talk about that one. Iran doesn't pose a threat to the United States. That's all nonsense propaganda designed for you to support a regime change in Iran.
All I'm saying is I think people should, I don't bring any of that up to, whatever, who cares? It was like a dumb segment on a show. The point is just that it almost reminded me of even like going to Charlie Kirk's event and the crowd is so much more on my side than they are on Josh Hammer's side, or going into Crowder's audience and even the crowd there is just like, no, dude, like we're like, a major thing is changing here, and just doing the old tribal partisan bullshit is not going to, that's not going to be enough to meet this moment. In other words, the point is, it's not good enough to just fall in line with the Republicans. You got to actually have something that you stand for. You have to actually believe in something, and you have to actually have something that you could tell people, like, no, this is what the problem is. This is the crisis you're facing, right? And here's the solution for said crisis. And so if we just fall in line with the Republicans, that doesn't mean, oh, now we have this big tent MAGA coalition. That means you're going to lose for sure. Like, you'd have to actually be for an America First agenda or you're going to lose. And that is something we should worry about because, man, we don't want to live through President AOC. Now, do we, Rob?
Well, we might. Our President Gavin Newsom, you never know what's going to happen there, but he's right. It's not enough to be like, I'm going to diagnose the problems Americans facing, right? It's wars and the deep state and corruption and spending. That's the problem. And here are our solutions. We're going to stop spending, stop the wars, undermine and uproot deep state supervillains, and that's how we're going to bring justice to America. And then you get in power, and you don't do that. That is how you derail a movement. That's the best way you derail a movement, by just using those schemes, those tactics to win election, but doing nothing about addressing them once you're in power. And that's a tale as old as time when it comes to American politics. All sorts of, promises are never kept. It's the iron rule of Scott Horton, my good friend Scott Horton, foreign policy aficionado over at the Independent Institute, total hero, total brilliant mind when it comes to foreign policy. He says his iron rule is that all presidents that get into power will keep all of their bad promises and abandon all of the good ones. It's a simple adage, but I think it's true. You definitely see it in the Trump presidency. So yeah, I'm with Dave. Trump hasn't, unveiled or unleashed any of his best promises that he made during the campaign trail. And a lot of people have jumped ship because of it. His approval ratings are in the tank because of it. It's not just one or two issues, but I generally agree that the Epstein issue was the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people when they heard him say, why are you still talking about Epstein? Why is anyone talking about Epstein? And then not only doubling down on that, but then calling it a Democratic hoax in the days following, making it very clear there would be no transparency in this child sex trafficking ring. It just completely turned off a lot of his base that expected him to actually address the corruption he talked about so commonly on the campaign trail. And then he elevates supervillain neocons like Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz and Mike Huckabee and John Ratcliffe by his side. Israel firsters like, Kash Patel to head the FBI. It's not going to be acceptable to a lot of Americans that supported him. That's what we're seeing. That's why his ratings are in the tank. He hasn't delivered, and as long as he doesn't deliver, and it keeps being glaringly obvious that he prioritizes Israel over the United States, he's not going to win back the favor of a lot of these people that have fallen away. But what do you guys think? Do you think Dave Smith's right about this? Do you think I am? Why has Trump's approval rating plummeted so low? Why is it in the tank? You let me know in the comments down below. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Dave Smith. If you like this video, please consider becoming a YouTube member. That would mean the world to me if you support the channel in that way. And if you do, I'll give you the gift of being able to view all of my members only videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. Also, if you want a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, click the link in the description below. You'll go off to a site, plug in your email. I'll send that directly to you, free of charge, no obligation. My gift to you. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.